The rain fell in relentless sheets over Seoul, turning the streets into a river of reflections and neon. Taeyang's car skidded around the corner, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. His chest burned with pain, and blood seeped from a wound he tried desperately to ignore. Rival gangs had ambushed him just hours earlier, bullets slicing through the night like deadly fireflies. Each breath he took felt heavier, every movement a gamble between life and death. He stumbled through the alleyways, hiding in the shadows as sirens wailed in the distance. His empire, his reputation, everything he had built, seemed on the verge of collapse. But Taeyang's pride would not let him surrender, not yet. Layla had never intended to be in this part of the city. She had arrived from America to visit family, planning quiet days and long nights filled with books and hospital rounds. But fate, as it often did, had other plans. On a rain-slick street, she noticed him first as a figure slumped against the wall, barely moving. Her medical instincts kicked in before her fear could take hold. She rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she checked for a pulse. It was faint, but it was there. He was alive. Carrying him was no small task, but adrenaline made her stronger than she knew. She found a secluded apartment she could access, a temporary sanctuary far from the streets where bullets had already claimed too many lives. She laid him on the floor, eyes scanning every shadow for signs of danger. His breathing was shallow, ragged, and every wound told a story of violence and betrayal. For hours, Layla worked tirelessly, treating him with the precision and care that only a doctor could provide. She patched wounds, stopped bleeding, and whispered reassurances he couldn't yet hear. Taeyang, awake in small bursts, looked at her through pain-clouded eyes and studied her every move. He had faced death countless times, had commanded fear in every alley and boardroom, but never had he felt so vulnerable, nor had he encountered someone who could command his full attention with nothing but quiet determination. As the storm outside raged, Layla's concern became fascination. She had met people who were dangerous, even arrogant, but Taeyang was different. He was strong, yes, and ruthless when necessary, but there was a vulnerability in him that few could see. And he was alive because of her. That realization made her heart pound in ways she didn't understand. Days passed, and with each passing moment, Taeyang's strength returned incrementally. He could no longer hide the interest he felt in her, and she, in turn, found herself thinking about him long after her shifts ended. They spoke cautiously at first, questions about life, morality, and the world beyond the walls of the apartment. Taeyang's world was one of power and danger. Layla's was one of healing and compassion. They seemed like two parallel lines that should never intersect, yet here they were, drawn together by fate. Their first shared meal was awkward, quiet, yet intimate. He watched her eat, noting the care she took with each bite, the gentleness in her hands, the warmth in her voice. She caught him staring once, and their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, and the world outside, with its violence, danger, and darkness, ceased to exist. It was just the two of them, fragile yet drawn together in a bond neither could explain. But danger was never far. Even as he healed, Taeyang knew that the streets would not forget him, that enemies lurked, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Layla, though frightened, refused to leave him. She had saved him once, and something in her told her she would do it again if necessary. And Taeyang, for all his pride and power, felt a warmth he hadn't known in years whenever she was near. He found himself thinking of her in ways that made him vulnerable, exposed, and alive in a way violence never could. As night fell on the city, the neon lights reflected in puddles, and the rain whispered secrets against the windows. The unspoken tension between them grew. Taeyang's hand brushed hers accidentally while passing a cup of water, and both froze. Neither spoke, but neither could ignore the electricity that passed between them. In that silence, a silent promise formed, a promise of protection, trust, and perhaps something deeper. By the time he could walk unaided, their bond had strengthened into something neither of them could ignore. Taeyang had been saved, not just from death, but from a world that threatened to consume him. Layla had become the anchor in a life that had known only chaos. And somewhere in that quiet, shared space between life and danger, two hearts began to beat in tandem, unknowingly stepping into a story that would change both their lives forever. The city outside remained relentless, full of threats, whispers of rival gangs, and dangers unseen. But inside the apartment, a fragile peace existed. And in that peace, a seed of love had taken root, one that would be tested by fire, blood, and the shadows that waited just beyond the door. Taeyang's recovery was slow, but each day brought him closer to strength and awareness. Layla insisted he rest, but he had grown restless in the apartment, pacing as if the walls themselves were closing in. His body was healing, but his mind raced with thoughts of enemies still lurking in the city, waiting for the slightest misstep. Even here, in the safety of Layla's care, danger never truly slept. Layla watched him carefully, balancing concern with her own rising curiosity. She had saved countless lives in hospitals back home, but this man was different. His strength was not just physical. It radiated in his presence, even when he was weak and bleeding. Yet there was a vulnerability to him, something human and raw that drew her closer despite the warnings her mind whispered. Their conversations became a lifeline. He asked about her past, about America, her family, and why she had come to Seoul. She told him fragments, cautious at first, fearing that revealing too much could give him enemies another way to hurt her. He shared less, speaking in guarded sentences about the city, his position, and the people who had tried to kill him. Yet in his words, she heard echoes of loneliness, of someone trapped in a world built on fear, violence, and loyalty that came at a deadly cost. As days passed, the quiet moments became more revealing. When she fed him soup, their fingers brushed occasionally, and each accidental touch sent a jolt neither could deny. When she leaned over him to adjust a bandage, he caught the faint scent of her hair and felt a strange, disarming calm wash over him. It was a feeling foreign to him, warmth without power, safety without control. He found himself noticing the little things, the curve of her smile, the determination in her eyes, the way her hands moved with precision and care. Yet even in these moments, the danger of his world loomed. Rival gangs were not idle. Taeyang could feel it, whispers of movement outside, footsteps too deliberate to be mere coincidence. One evening, he awoke to the sound of distant sirens and a shadow flickering near the window. Layla saw the tension in his gaze and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "They can't find you here," she said softly, but he knew better. The streets did not forget, and enemies had long memories. The threat only deepened their bond. Layla's fear for him made her braver, and Taeyang's need to protect her made him more vulnerable. One night, he spoke in a voice quieter than usual, almost a whisper. "Why do you risk yourself for me?" She hesitated, her heart pounding. "Because someone had to," she said. "And because I believe you're more than the man they say you are." There was an honesty in her voice that struck him. He had lived surrounded by lies, betrayals, and violence. No one had ever seen the man behind the armor he wore so diligently. In that moment, he wanted to let her see everything, the fear, the loneliness, the man he tried to hide behind fearsome power. But he did not. Not yet. Their intimacy grew in small, imperceptible ways. A hand held a little longer, a glance that lingered too long, a shared silence that spoke more than words ever could. Taeyang began to anticipate her presence, feeling empty in the moments she stepped out of the apartment. And Layla, too, found herself thinking of him constantly, her medical concern blending with something far deeper, an affection she could not yet name, though her heart already knew it. One evening, a sudden knock shattered their fragile routine. Taeyang stiffened, muscles tensing. He had told her he would handle threats, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. Layla moved instinctively in front of him, scanning the door. But it was nothing more than a delivery, a reminder that the world outside had not forgotten him, that danger was never far. They both exhaled in relief, but in that moment, the reality of their situation settled like a stone in their chests. They were together, but they were not safe. The night ended with them sitting quietly, the rain tapping against the windows, talking softly about dreams and fears. Taeyang admitted, almost reluctantly, that he had not allowed himself to feel anything this peaceful in years. Layla confessed that despite her fear, she felt drawn to him in ways she could not ignore. Their hands brushed, and this time, neither pulled away. It was a small surrender, but it was enough to change everything between them. In the safety of that apartment, amidst the storm outside, they found something rare: connection. In a world built on violence, trust, and survival, they discovered that two souls could touch without weapons, without power, without fear. And that perhaps, just perhaps, love could exist even here, in the shadows of the city. But the night outside was relentless. Somewhere in the darkness, rival eyes watched, planning, waiting. And though the warmth of their growing bond was comforting, Taeyang knew the world he belonged to would not allow this peace to last for long. Taeyang's recovery had reached a point where he could move with a semblance of normalcy, but his mind remained restless. Every glance at the rain-streaked streets from Layla's apartment reminded him that danger was never far. His enemies had not forgotten the ambush that had nearly killed him, and though he tried to focus on healing, the instinct to control, to dominate, to protect, remained a constant pulse in his veins. Layla noticed the restlessness in him, the tightness in his jaw, the flicker in his eyes whenever a shadow crossed the alley below. She tried to soothe him with her presence, offering quiet conversation, gentle touches, and medical care. Yet, there was more than gratitude in his gaze now. It was curiosity, fascination, and something darker, an intensity she had never felt from any patient before. Their proximity grew dangerous in ways neither could deny. In the evenings, when the city outside was a blur of rain and neon, they would sit in silence, side by side on the worn couch, sometimes brushing shoulders, sometimes leaning just slightly closer. Their conversations, once cautious, became personal. Taeyang spoke rarely of his past, but when he did, his words carried weight. The burden of someone who had survived betrayal, blood, and death countless times. Layla listened, enraptured, her own fears mingling with admiration for the man she had saved. One night, as he shifted to reach for a cup of water, their fingers brushed. The touch was accidental, but the spark was undeniable. Both froze, their eyes locking. Taeyang's lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but no words came. Layla's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing in the quiet room. Neither of them moved for a long moment, trapped in a gravity neither wanted to resist. It was not just desire. It was curiosity, fascination, and the unspoken acknowledgement of mortality that hovered around them. Taeyang had faced death more times than he could count, but in Layla's presence, he felt something else entirely. The fear of losing, the fear of attachment, and yet the yearning to stay close. Layla, too, felt an attraction that was both thrilling and terrifying. She had always been rational, careful, and precise. But this man, dangerous as he was, had ignited something primal in her. A blend of adrenaline and longing she couldn't explain. Days turned into nights, and with each passing moment, the tension became more tangible. Taeyang began to observe her with a subtle intensity, noting the way she moved, the determination in her eyes, and the warmth of her hands. Layla, in turn, found herself stealing glances at him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his chest rose and fell with each breath, the subtle strength in his hands, the dangerous calm in his gaze. The first night that truly shifted their connection came after an ambush scare. A rival gang had been spotted near the building, forcing Taeyang to move cautiously around the apartment, ensuring their safety. After the danger had passed, they found themselves sitting close together, the rain tapping against the windows like a heartbeat. Layla's hand brushed his, this time not accidental. He looked down at her fingers entwined with his breath catching for a fraction of a second. "Do you always put yourself in danger for others?" she asked quietly, her eyes searching his. Taeyang's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Not always, but some things are worth the risk." His gaze lingered on hers, and for a heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist. They leaned closer, Drawn by an invisible force neither could resist. Their lips met in a tentative, electric kiss, soft at first, testing boundaries, yet filled with a passion born of shared danger, gratitude, and unspoken longing. The kiss lingered longer than it should have, a silent confession of something deeper than either dared to name. That night changed everything. There was no turning back. They had tasted what it felt like to be connected in ways beyond survival, beyond gratitude, beyond reason. Desire had intertwined with affection, and both knew that the storm outside, rival gangs, bullets, betrayal, would not be able to destroy what had begun between them. Yet even in this new intimacy, the shadow of Taeyang's life lingered. He was a man hunted by enemies, bound by a code of power and violence. Layla, despite her growing feelings, remained acutely aware that loving him meant stepping into a world she had never imagined. A world where safety was a lie and every day could be the last. But desire and danger had a way of converging. And as the rain continued to fall, blurring the lines between safety and peril, love and fear, Taeyang and Layla both realized that the connection they had found was impossible to ignore. It was a bond forged in blood, sustained by trust, and strengthened by the very peril that threatened to tear them apart. In the quiet hours before dawn, they held each other, a fragile yet undeniable intimacy forming between them. Outside, the city remained alive, relentless and dangerous. But inside that small apartment, two hearts had begun a dance that neither bullets, betrayal, nor death could easily disrupt. And as the first light of morning filtered through the rain-streaked windows, both Taeyang and Layla knew that their story had only just begun. A story that would be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. Taeyang had always known the world he ruled was filled with betrayal, but he had never imagined just how close the enemy could get. The quiet safety of the apartment that Layla provided had been a fragile illusion, one that shattered the moment he discovered the presence of a mole within his organization. The realization hit him like a bullet to the chest. Someone he had trusted, someone who had fought at his side for years, had been feeding information to his rivals. Layla noticed the change in him immediately. His sharp eyes, always alert, now flickered with suspicion and tension. Every time a shadow moved outside the window, he flinched. Every unexpected sound sent him into a silent calculation of possible threats. She tried to ease his worry, offering tea and gentle words, but Taeyang's mind remained preoccupied with the world outside, where danger never rested. Their bond, however, had grown too strong to be ignored. Even in the midst of tension, he sought her out, needing her calm presence, needing the warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold, violent world he inhabited. Layla, sensing his inner turmoil, reached for him without hesitation, letting her hand rest on his arm, her eyes holding his in a steady, reassuring gaze. For a moment, the chaos of his world faded, replaced by the certainty of her presence. The first attack came unexpectedly. Gunshots rang out in the street below, forcing Taeyang to spring into action. He moved with lethal precision, his body still recovering but his instincts honed sharper than ever. Layla, refusing to stay hidden, followed close behind, clutching a medical kit, ready to save him if necessary. They moved through the shadows together, their trust in one another unspoken but absolute. As they reached the source of the threat, the rival gang emerged, weapons drawn. Taeyang's eyes burned with controlled fury as he fought, each movement fluid, deadly, precise. Layla stayed close, bandaging the injured when possible, offering support not just with her skills, but with her presence, keeping him grounded in moments of near panic. The fight was brutal, chaotic, and unforgiving, but together they survived, emerging bloodied but unbroken. That night, back in the apartment, Taeyang examined his injuries, more aware than ever of the risk his world posed to Layla. He pressed a gentle hand to her cheek, his touch lingering. "You shouldn't have been there," he murmured, the edge of anger softened by concern. Layla shook her head, her own hand covering his. "I'm not leaving you," she said simply. "Not now, not ever." Their shared danger had created a new intimacy between them. Words became unnecessary. A glance, a touch, A shared breath conveyed more than sentences ever could. Taeyang felt a vulnerability he had long buried, and yet, for the first time, he wanted someone to see it. Layla, in turn, felt a thrill in standing beside him, not just as his savior but as someone who could share in his world, even if it meant risking everything. As the night deepened, they spoke of fears and regrets. Taeyang admitted that trust had always been a luxury in his life, one he could rarely afford. Layla listened, her heart aching for the man who had carried so much alone. She admitted her own fears of the violence, of losing him, of becoming part of a world she did not understand. Yet in their honesty, they found a connection that strengthened their bond far beyond physical attraction. In the quiet hours, as the rain once again tapped against the window, they sat close together. Taeyang's hand brushed Layla's hair back, and for a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to imagine a life beyond the shadows. A life where they could be together without the constant threat of death. Layla rested her head against his shoulder, her heart racing with the same forbidden hope. But the night outside remained relentless. The mole within his organization had not disappeared, and whispers of betrayal continued to grow louder. Taeyang knew that the safety he had found with Layla was temporary, a fragile illusion that could be shattered at any moment. And yet, in the warmth of her presence, he allowed himself to feel something he had not in years. The fragile beginnings of trust, love, and the possibility of a future. By the time the first light of dawn filtered through the rain-streaked windows, Taeyang and Layla sat together in silence, hearts beating in unison, knowing that the enemy was still out there but also knowing that whatever storms came, they would face them together. Their love, born in blood and shadow, had begun to solidify, promising that no matter the danger, they would not face it alone. And as the city awoke around them, unaware of the threats lurking in its depths, two hearts, wounded but unbroken, began to intertwine in a way that would challenge fate itself. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel so you can see more videos like this.